still watching Nigeria Decides. The Nigerian economy is our focus right now. It is expected to gain traction this year on the back of stronger household consumption and public spending.
There's definitely, and now the recent slide in oil prices and announced OPEC oil cuts pose downside risk going forward. However, political uncertainty over the outcome of the next month's general election also clouds the outlook. Well, to discuss the economy of Nigeria, we have the DG of LCCI, Muda Yusuf, as well as Johnson Chukwu, the CEO, Cowry Asset Management. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, we're talking about the state of Nigeria's economy. First and foremost, we have to look at the ERGP, that's the Economy and Recovery Growth Plan. Now, when this comes into focus, we're looking at the importer-exporter window. We're also looking at headline inflation as well, which is currently at about 11.44%. How have these areas fared in your assessment so far? Johnson.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you look at the Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, and you compare it to where we are today, I think we've not done much progress. We've not achieved much progress as it relates to achieving the targets specified in the ERGP. If you look at the parameters you just mentioned, inflation is supposed to be single-digit inflation. We're dealing with 11.44% inflation at the end of December 2018. If you look at the issue of unemployment, there's a provision of 15 million jobs. Unfortunately, the number of unemployed has increased about more than 20 million. We're dealing with an unemployment rate that is now about 20%. So this is at major variance with the targets of the ERGP. If you look at the power generation, there's a provision that will be generating 10,000 megawatts by 2019. We'll be generating and distributing 10,000 megawatts by 2019. Today, we're just generating about 4,000, we're distributing about 3,500 megawatts. So there is a major divergence between the targets specified in ERGP and where we are today. We've not made much progress. And if the government seems to have recognized that, take for instance, the budget provision for 2019, the government budgeting a GDP growth rate of 3.01%.
Exactly.
In the ERGP, the provision is 3.5%. So the government seems to have petitioned the provisions of the ERGP.
But how do we now marry this disparity? Because at the end of the day, we have to be looking at realistic scopes when we say we're going to deliver. Because if the budget is expected to be delivered to us in a few weeks or months, hopefully, then RT is supposed to be questioning some of these benchmarks that we've set.
Yeah, the first thing is the Economic Growth and Recovery Plan is supposed to be a medium to long-term economic blueprint, which every other economic plan, including the annual budgetary plan, should have fitted into. But that's why I said it doesn't look like the government is still driving the ERGP, because the first thing is that when you have a long-term plan, the short-term plan becomes milestones, measurable milestones towards achieving the long-term plan. If the short-term plans are no longer in sync with the long-term plan, it simply means that you have jettisoned the long-term plan.
Mr. Muda Yusuf, now when the everyday man hears that inflation rates are going higher and we are still around the threshold of double digits, the fear is that commodities go higher, things are a little more expensive, life is relatively unbearable. How much of a reality is this, and how do we also correct this trend?
Well, first of all, when we are analyzing the economy, we should define the perspective from which we are analyzing the economy. We should not assume that everybody has an academic or theoretical mindset. If you ask the average man on the street, how is the economy faring?
He'll say bad.
He tell you, assess it from the point of view of how costly it is to buy food, for instance,
purchasing
which
power.
is a very basic thing. What is the ease of access to education for the children? How easy is it for him to send the children to school? What is the ease of access to health? What is ease of access to transportation, to housing? In other words, I'm saying that when we evaluate the economy from the ordinary man's point of view, it's about the impact on his welfare. So if you are looking at maybe between this year and last year or the last 3 years, it's a question of looking at some of these parameters of welfare. What is the food inflation? What is the situation with health, education, transportation, and so on and so forth? That is the way the man on the street will assess the economy, irrespective of what the GDP numbers are saying, what the foreign reserves are saying, what the inflation is saying. As a business person, an average business person will also assess the economy from the point of view of the health of his or her business. What is the effects of the economy on the bottom line? What is the profitability of your business?
You deal with a whole lot of businesses.
How are you to sustain?
Yes,
how
what has been the
sustainable
trend so far?
It has been very challenging. I'm laying all this background for you to also know the perspective of the individual segments of this economy.
Okay.
So that we don't just assume that everybody will assess the economy as an economist. You understand the point I'm making? So that if we are engaging the politicians on those in government, we should be drawing attention to distance. It's not that it's enough to just set some targets of ARGP or GDP growth and all of that. Once you achieve it, you begin to celebrate. No. We need to address these developmental issues. And that is why the issue of having a growth that is inclusive, that is why it is very critical. It is possible for you to have, we have seen years when we had fantastic GDP growth numbers, and poverty was increasing, unemployment was increasing. You know, it looks like a paradox. But if you are driving the economy in a way that is not inclusive, if you are driving the economy in a way that you don't take account of some of these very important developmental and human issues, you may not be achieving much. Even if you have the right kind of policies, you cannot achieve results.
Yes, we understand that there are bottlenecks when it comes to achieving sound capital expenditure and having the dividends come to us. But having a peg of 4.04 trillion naira in recurrent expenditure, we haven't still learnt lessons. We haven't yet invested enough to reduce this amount we are spending. And we look at debt servicing as well, skyrocketing, entering into double digits of the budget. How does this make common sense when we are looking for an economic and recovery growth plan?
Well, in the first place, to address the issue you just mentioned, the issue of an obtuse budget structure, where the recurrent expenditure has continued to trump over capital expenditure, we need to take some drastic measures to address that, which unfortunately the government has not been able to do and cannot do this year because it's an election year. It will take a lot of courage for any government to do that. Let's take, for instance, in some years back, maybe 2006 or 2007, the government set up a committee led by Oresanya, the then secretary to the federal government, the head of service, to review the structure of the public sector and to rationalize, and they recommended rationalization of some of the ministry agencies and departments because some of them have overlapping functions. The government has implemented that. The reality is that if you don't do anything about the structure of public service, you are not going to cut down on the recurrent expenditure. Remember, the government is budgeting another 30,000 increase, a new minimum wage of 30,000. And once you do that, you're going to scale up the salary bill, the wages of all categories of staff.
But do you think the budget will be able to accommodate this?
Well, the government said they had made provision in the 2019 budget for the increase in salaries. But what I'm just highlighting is that if you continue to do the same thing year in, year out, you're going to get the same results. There's nothing has been made, no effort has been made whatsoever that is concrete, that is sustainable to reduce the level of recurrent expenditure of government. One of the measures that the government has to adopt if they want to reduce the recurrent expenditure is to bring in private sector to run some of the business that the government is currently doing. Take, for instance, an institution like NNPC. There is a very, has an opaque management system. If you go to ministries, you observe one thing clearly, and that's a lot of people are not doing anything. And they get the peanut that you pay them, but they keep coming back to collect every month.